Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series, our show in which we invite some guests onto the channel to have a bit of discussion about the ongoings and current affairs of Arsenal Football Club. I'm very happy to be joined by a couple of fantastic guests. First of all, joining me, and you've probably seen it before over on the Arsenal Way with myself. If you haven't, why on earth aren't you subscribed? Link in the description as always. It's Guy Clark. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, all good, Tom. Thanks a lot for inviting me on.
No, always a pleasure, my friend. Good to see you. Of course, you've escaped us now over on Blood Red. So I'm giving you your Arsenal fix back, of course. So how's it going over there? All good, Liverpool-wise?
Yeah, I mean, it's for a Gooner behind enemy lines. Yeah, thankfully they didn't do the clean sweep. Still getting a fair ribbing, as you'd imagine, but yeah, maybe not quite as painful as it could have been.
I suppose when they lost the Champions League final, it gave you a little bit of ammunition to
ammunition back. Exactly what I needed.
Absolutely. Imagine that Arsenal. The only thing we've got against Liverpool is that they lost the Champions League final. Oh, how I wish for better times than we have right now. And also making up our panel today, it's James. How you doing, James Cook? You good, Joel?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. It's been far too long.
Yeah, it has. It has been very. We spoke about the other day, saying it was keen to get you back on the show, and I mean, like a fairy godmother, your wishes is my command. So no, it's great to have you back on the show. Good to be chatting about Arsenal with you again. And how's things been? Busy, working, creating, all that lovely stuff.
Yeah, all busy. I mean, constantly having my fun activities tormented by Arsenal, so it's hard to get any peace of mind. But you know, we've got the summer now, so we can just drown ourselves in transfer news before we go through it all again in August.
Absolutely. We're going to kick off with transfers. And of course, the big one, which is he's the biggest epitome of the most famous Arsenal saying ever of like a brand new signing, William Saliba, who's been, of course, on our books since 2019, and yet looks like he's getting ever closer to playing that first magical fixture. Guy, are you over the moon, expectant, fine about this, or how are your feelings about William Saliba coming back?
Full of intrigue. I was thinking about it yesterday actually, and was kind of thinking if I was told we were signing tomorrow, kind of the hot young thing in French football, how excited would it be? It kind of varied, but given this is a guy, as you say, who's been on our books for nearly 3 years now, actually, it's more just the case of finally hoping he's ready. I mean, when Unai Emery came in, it was initially right back to Saint Etienne. He goes, it's all part of the process for him. Then, of course, Mikel Arteta had come in and was fully expecting kind of then that he would really be dropped into the team and play. He obviously played in the under-23s a bit in the Checkatrade Trophy. Didn't go all too well. Was it AFC Wimbledon he was sent off against?
Yeah, I think it was Wimbledon. Was he sent off twice? I feel like there was another game he was sent off in as well.
Either scored an own goal or was sent off in another.
He was sent off in the Papa John's Trophy when we were eliminated. I think it was Wimbledon. It was,
yeah. And then obviously went back out on loan to Nice as it was at the time last summer. Again, full of intrigue, expectancy of what he might be able to offer. And of course, nothing came of it. Looks as though he's had a brilliant season out at Marseille. And hopefully he can come back and he will have had more squad numbers than appearances, and not just by one either. So let's wait and see what he offers.
Absolutely. I mean, James, were you looking at this kind of expectantly to be an interview where he went, I want to go back to Marseille, I've had a really good season there, I'm not getting given a chance at Arsenal? Or actually, were you kind of, I'm expecting him to come back, and what we're hearing is what I thought was going to happen?
I really hate this whole spectacle that is made out of this because, like, with all fairness, you're not Messi, you're not Ronaldo. Like, come on, do we really need these interviews? Like, it's just, it seems to be hopefully the last of what has been so many throughout the season where he's just yo-yoed with what he's going to do. So, yeah, it frustrated me a little bit that we had to have this whole debacle over what he's going to do. Like, he's this, God almost figure looking over us, which kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just me reading into it a bit too much. I don't think we needed that much of a song and dance about it as such when he is our player. He's got 2 years left on his contract. He's an Arsenal player. If he wants to leave, then I'm sure the club would have worked to have found some solution. But with all due respect to him, like, he's contracted to Arsenal, and that's the bottom line, irrespective of what he said in that interview. So I'm relieved more than anything that he's saying he wants to commit to Arsenal, because they're all the right signs and the right things you want to hear, given that we do want him to be part of the club next season. And I'm really excited for him to come back, put all this stuff to one side where he said in the past that he might want to stay at Marseille, whatever, it's in the past. If you're signing a 21-year-old French international who's just won Young Player of the Year, like, forget he's been on loan for 3 years. If he was coming into your team as a fresh new face, which he virtually is, you'd be absolutely buzzing about that. And to have him, White, and Gabriel as our cohort of centre-halves next year is...
Rob Holding. Can't forget Rob Holding.
And Rob Holding, yeah, Rob Holding, of course. And you've got, Reckitt coming through. I mean, it's mouthwatering. Like, it's really exciting. The prospect to go away from home and potentially play a back three with Gabriel, White, Saliba, and, even have someone like White or Saliba play a right back. It just should give us a bit more defensive solidity that we were missing last season. And when we did have someone like Holding come in, to have someone like Saliba come in instead is a really good prospect. I don't think we should be getting ahead of ourselves and expect him to start the first game of the season. I think what will probably happen is he'll probably start that first Carabao Cup game and then might slowly edge his way into the team. Obviously, you'd assume he'd get the Europa fixtures, but I really think this will be a big season for him, and I hope we find some way of accommodating him into the starting 11 sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim in the chat says, to be fair to Saliba, it was clearly the French media playing on the furore that is Arsenal fans online. Clearly just an interview to show his appreciation for the Marseille fans, they being a massive club that they are. Matt pointing out, thinking that the French media didn't help by twisting things. Do you buy into this guy? The idea that obviously the French side of things, the reporting on him has been very pro staying in France. Of course, GFFN are constantly memed talking about being against Arsenal. Do you buy into this and think there's any credence to this theory?
Yeah, I think there's probably an essence of that within it. Because I mean, the Arsenal fan base has been on strings for so many media outlets for a number of years, hasn't it? I mean, there's an element we know there's an element of the Arsenal fan base that do react either overly positively or overly negatively to whatever minutiae detail is leaked out there, and I do think that was part of what was happening with Saliba. Like Cookie said, that I was quite similar actually in terms of this interview with Saliba, of just waiting to hear definitively what way it was going to go. But equally, it's not his choice. He's still 2 years left on a contract. It's not really as though he has all the power. Yes, there is an element of power there for him, but equally was a case of you are still contracted to Arsenal and don't get sort of too carried away. And then when it came out that actually he's looking forward to returning to Arsenal and maybe being able to prove what he's got, I thought actually that does reflect fairly well on him, that there's been all of this talk, whether it's kind of been blown out of proportion or not, that he's absolutely loved it at Marseille and would want to stay there, actually then comes out and says, no, Arsenal, I want to go and see what I can do there. And for me on him, I think that the buzzword, the phrase has got to be opportunity. It's an opportunity for him to come back, show what he can do, an opportunity for him to maybe be that guy to really take on the Arsenal defence to the next level, and an opportunity for Arsenal to actually finally have that area of the pitch locked down and fixed, and the versatility he offers tactically and both personally to whether we go to a back three for certain games. It's been a formation that has worked well at times for Mikel Arteta, and the fact he's played in that kind of right-hand side role for Marseille as well. I think Ben White would suit being the centre of a back three in a ball in a possession-hungry side like Arsenal, going to dominate the ball, and Gabriel equally adept playing on that left-hand side.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about kind of how it could work. I mean, you talked a second ago, James, about the idea that you think he'll play the Carabao Cup and then the Europa League before maybe fighting for a way into the team. Of course, with the 5 substitutions, I'd expect him to be one of those early ones to come on if we've got a lead and we want to change up the defence to give it a bit more energy. Perhaps he goes in at right back to give us some more, discipline at that right back position as well. There's options, but do you think that the chance to play a back three will come into the mind of Arteta, or do you think he's very much married to this 4-3-3 that he's stuck with so far?
I think it's a possibility, but I don't think it's going to be the philosophical. I don't know what the word is. Philosophy, yeah, the philosophy that he wants to adopt going forward, because we all know like he's working towards this 4-3-3, and in fairness, the way we're going with it, I wouldn't really want him to change that too much. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from the team in that formation, but I think it gives you the opportunity when you go particularly away from home in those games that we notoriously struggle in, so away to Liverpool, away to City. I would love it if we lined up with a back five, pretty much, have Tomiyasu on the right hand side, Tierney on the left hand side, and then that back three of our top 3 centre halves. I mean, all 5 of them being fit is a big ask in the first instance, but it would be a really good prospect. I'm not saying it would necessarily work, but you've got all the ingredients there on paper that looks like it would make sense. And I think if it does work away from home, there's no reason why we couldn't necessarily start playing it more often away from home. Because away games, like, there is no easy game away from home in the Premier League. So if we did line up like that regularly, I think it would still benefit the team, because the thing is, yes, it's a back 5 and on paper it's defensive, but all 3 of those players are very good at playing it out with their feet. And then you put the players in front of them, Partey, Xhaka, Ødegaard, whoever it may be, you've got the players there to go on and do the stuff in the attacking third. So I think it would work. I really do. But I don't think it would be on Arteta's mind to use that system at the forefront. But away from home, yeah, I'd love to see it trialled.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've always wanted to see Arsenal be a bit more tactful away from home in those big games against Liverpool. And City, despite the fact that we played a back 3 at City last season, it was made up of Holding, Chambers and Kolasinac in a back 3, I think, and Cedric and Tierney were the others, and Ødegaard was next to Xhaka, and it was just a cluster mess of chaos, basically, and I'd like us to be a little bit more astute. You could see us going to a back 5 that you described there. Tomiyasu is a really interesting figure of where he kind of fits, because he could play in a back 3 of those of those centre backs. Cedric, for all of his faults, he's someone that can play a wing back role comfortably. His deliveries have got better since his time at Arsenal. And if you've got Tomiyasu, White, Saliba, Gabriel as 4 options for a back 3, you've got someone like Cedric there. You've got Brooke Norton-Cuffy coming through, who's a very offensive-minded fullback as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings in pre-season. Maybe there's a pathway for him to play, right wing back in a back 3. How then the midfield changes is obviously going to be the big question, with losing out one of the central midfielders for an extra defender. But I'm sure it's something that we could adopt. Go on.
I think equally as well, though, whether it's a back 3 or even as a back 4. I mean, he's a 21-year-old who's never played a minute of Premier League football. I think it might be a bit naive to think he's going to go straight in as a centre half. And actually, I think Tomiyasu, where you mentioned him this year, has kind of maybe enlightened people to having a physical presence who can defend the back post effectively at right back. I mean, the amount of times we've gone to Anfield recently and they hang the ball up to the far post and Sadio Mane comes flying in, whether he's going to be at Liverpool or not, kind of moot point. They've got Luis Diaz, who could equally do that kind of thing. Having a defender who at right back is defence first, is moving away from even going as far back to kind of the days of Bakary Sagna. Then you've Mathieu Debuchy for the limited time he was at Arsenal and playing, that should be said, Hector Bellerin and Cedric all kind of fit that profile of almost a right winger at right back who really is attack minded first and defence comes secondary to them. Tomiyasu this year, the solidity he offered to the team and saw Kieran Tierney really at his best then going forward. Maybe with Saliba, there's actually a chance, and you started by saying like a new signing, and effectively in that regard, a guy who is back up to Tomiyasu, who himself had injury issues at right back, but equally the chances, I'm sure, in the Europa League will come at centre half until he eventually does nail himself down as a first team regular. But with 2 years left on his contract, he's going to have to be quick about it. He's going to have to make an impression, because in 6 months' time, Arsenal probably going to be thinking about making a decision one way or the other as to whether it's probably a lucrative new contract they offer out, or whether actually come the winter window or even January, they do need to sell to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I don't. It's going to be difficult, isn't it, to understand when the timing of making that decision is. But obviously, there's lots of factors with that. Just picking up on the chat box, I wanted to draw something from Ansu. Says I don't like the idea of playing 5 at the back. I think it's defeatist in terms of the way that it's played against the top teams. West Ham don't do it, and they play their games and still have the opposition. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but West Ham have played a back 3 a number of times this season. Cresswell's operated as a left centre back at times. And, Chelsea won the Champions League with a back 3. So I don't necessarily look at it as a defeatist way of playing. I think it's an adaptive way of playing when you come up against oppositions that, it's better suited. It really suffocates the wide areas because you've got a right-sided centre-back and a right wing-back that can really suffocate an explosive winger, and on the left-hand side as well. It can often be looked at as maybe even an offensive style of play because you submit the idea of having disciplined fullbacks in favour of them overlapping the wingers. So it can actually become an over-attacking kind of formation as well. So I don't necessarily agree with you, Answer, but I admit I take on the point about the idea of maybe it being in certain games a little bit too sit back and take the pressure. but it is also about realising where Arsenal are in some games. And when you play against Man City and Liverpool, perhaps playing on the break is the best way to get that result. And a back three certainly allows you to do that. Let's look into the striker side of things, James, in regards to the players we've been linked with. Obviously, Jesus is the big one that as we know at, but the most recent and strongest link right now is with Gianluca Scamacca. Now, depending on how much you believe that we might get a deal done for this, it's been reported by The Athletic that the interest in him is genuine, but the interest from Italy is that they're claiming that a bid has been made and rejected at this stage. Do you like the idea of Arsenal going for a classic number 9, 6'5", doesn't necessarily create too much? He had 0 assists in Serie A last season and 16 goals, but is going to give you more presence, more physical ability and aerial threat in the box, and is a good finisher when the ball's at his feet too. Does that attract you, or do you like the profile of someone like Jesus more for their adaptability and creativity?
I think my personal preference would be with Jesus, just because he's had so much experience in the Premier League and his work rate and what he could offer to this team, and particularly having that past relationship with Arteta. I just think it ticks all the right boxes. Initially, I was a little bit underwhelmed almost when we first got linked to him, because I think it was at the point where he wasn't in the City side, he wasn't really scoring goals, and it didn't really seem like the most exciting signing. But he's come into the City team, done really well in their run into the Premier League title, and I think it'd be a great signing for us. I think it's exactly what we need, and he's at that right age, 25 years old, where he's going to have Saka and Martinelli, Smith Rowe alongside him, who are obviously that bit younger. And you can just see it being the spearhead of our attack for the next 4, 5, 6 years. So I think it could work really well. I'll be totally transparent. I don't really know a great deal about Scamacca. I'm not entirely sure I believe the links to him either. Notoriously Italian players don't really leave Serie A, so I'm not getting too drawn into it. And, given what happened with Vlahovic in January, I think if Inter Milan or AC Milan or Juventus or whoever it may be went in for him, then I think his preference would be to stay in Serie A. And if he's got 0 assists, I'm not sure he necessarily plays into the way that we want to play, because I think the reason we played Lacazette was because he brought so much out of Martinelli, Saka, Smith Rowe, Ødegaard when he came into the side in January. Obviously, that fell away towards the end. But I think we need someone that's going to be a contributor to the players around him. And Jesus is more of that player. So, my preference, in answer to your question, is definitely Jesus.
Where do you sit on this guy? Because we've discussed at length, the idea of this clone striker and what that brings to you. You don't have to change as much. And I remember speaking to you about this, and you've got the idea of wanting more presence in the box as well. Does that lean you towards someone like Scamacca? And then maybe if you can get both in a dream world, that Jesus becomes more of a wider forward option for us?
Definitely. I think Jesus has got that versatility. My reservations on Jesus is if he's made the main man, which it seems as though his next club, he wants to be that. Whether he's quite going to get the returns that are needed. And I do think we are probably needing of 2 forward options this season. Now, whether Jesus is seen as primarily a central option, but someone who can also play out wide, and then we go for a Scamacca type player, which I think the reports you've got to treat with skepticism, but equally there's got to be some level of foundation to them. The fact that last summer Calvert-Lewin was supposedly on the radar. In January, we know how strong the club went for Vlahovic. It's clear Mikel Arteta probably does want a focal point number 9, which, for, as you say, the lack of assists he's had this season, you would probably say arguably over the last 5 or best part of a decade, Arsenal's best striker has been Olivier Giroud. Now, I know individually, I know Aubameyang got loads of goals.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
When you look at, we had Aubameyang and Lacazette both at the club, 2 record signings at the same time, and weren't able to get back into the Champions League.
And we went backwards. Yeah.
Olivier Giroud was such a brilliant focal point for bouncing the ball off for the likes of Sanchez, for Ozil, for Walcott, for Welbeck, for all of these guys to get us up the pitch. Now, like James said, I've not seen much of him, so I don't know what his build-up play and his all-round game is like. As you say, he's got no assists, so maybe he isn't quite that player. But having that focal point who is an outlet to get us up the pitch, Lacazette was good at it. Problem was he got too tired too quickly and dropped very, very deep. And the outball was only 20 yards from our own defensive line. Whereas if this guy's higher up the pitch, a younger player who, as you say, he's such a tall, rangy player, hopefully he's got decent ball retention ability to keep the ball, play back to goal and link with other players, you can kind of see what it is that Arsenal are wanting to build. Now, with Jesus, it's probably someone who, at the age he's at, is probably more ready to come straight in Premier League experience to hit the ground running. But equally, with this young side we're building and the age that Scamacca's at, he would equally fit that profile to develop with the likes of Smith Rowe, with Saka, with Erdegaard, with Martinelli, to maybe be that guy who leads the line and allows the rest to play in behind.
I think when it comes to players that we think about in that, I don't want to go archetypal number 9, because we've seen the number 9 position evolve and change so much over the last 10 years and beyond that. But Arsenal have got players in Saka and Martinelli who I think would just benefit so much from, as you said about Giroud, playing off someone like that. Do you think, James, that I know you said you like Jesus and you don't know much about Scamacca, but do you see what kind of guy says there about Giroud and what he brought to the team and maybe what a striker in that ilk could do for Arsenal?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was a little bit devastated when we missed out on Vlahovic in January, because you look at him and you think this guy would take us to the next level. Obviously, that ship sailed. And I think the closest thing you're probably going to get to him now is Darwin Núñez. And I'm not sure how much of a realistic option that is. I mean, we're not hearing any links to him whatsoever, unless something comes out of nowhere. I don't think that's potentially a realistic target for us, with the minute given that we didn't make the top 4. So I can totally see where you're coming from. And the ideal scenario would be to have one of each profile, one like Jesus and one like Scamacca. But like you referenced earlier, the only thing that would be my main hesitation would be the 0 assists, because it kind of raises question marks as to, okay, he's got the profile, but can he actually link up the play? I mean, we've all seen, the likes of Nikola Zigic, who linked back with him like 10 years ago. Big player, but he couldn't link up at all. So, it's one thing having the profile and being able to score goals, but if you can't actually bring the players into the game that are around you, then that aspect could be quite detrimental to us if he's not able to bring that to the team. So I agree with what Guy says. If we did bring him in and he was able to develop with the players around us, that would be an exciting prospect. But I think what we need right now are those 25 plus players to bring in, and maybe just one or two of those slightly younger players. Because I think, it's great going through this process and everything, but if we don't make the top 4 next season, then it's going to be tough to take. So we really need to be going up to that next level this window, making those signings. We had that last window last summer where we brought all the young guys in, and you're seeing White developing, etc., etc. We just need the finished articles now, pretty much, or the articles that are 80-90% there, and Jesus fits that bill for me. He's won Premier League titles. He's got shed loads of appearances. I mean, he averages a goal contribution pretty much every other game for City. So in terms of what he can bring to the team, it's staring us in the face for me.
When it comes to deciding when we have, not deciding, but when we just have to get these players in, the recent announcement that Arsenal have a new fixture in their pre-season plan on the 8th of July. It's a Friday at 4:30, I think it's going to be. Indeed, it is July 8th. It's an interesting date because it's ahead of all the other fixtures, which then obviously brings the focus and shifts it at least a week ahead of what it was. So, Guy, do you think that when it comes to kind of a theoretical deadline around when Edu needs to get his deals done, it has to be before that July 8th? Is that kind of a guide, or is that the cutoff? Because, there's possible expectations about pre-season, then returning for pre-seasons towards the end of June. So do you think it's that July 8th now that has to be targeted?
Yeah, ideally we'd have a new signing in on the first day of pre-season.
Just the one?
No, I would say a minimum of one. For me, I mean, you look at the squad, and I'd say this summer, in terms of big additions, we probably need 4. I would count Saliba in that, because we have never seen him kick a ball for Arsenal, and he's a key defensive recruit that would be coming in to improve on what we've got. A central midfielder and 2 forward players. Now, Saliba is going to be there, so that's one taken care of. And then I would say another. So half of your major business, as I say, this summer needs to be done. I still can't believe we've gone through the whole season that we did without adding another central midfield player. I know Yuri Tielemans is very heavily linked at the minute. We'll have to wait and see how that one plays out. But another central midfield player is just an absolute essential piece of business that needs doing. And then however he wants to go about the forward option, we need a out-and-out striker now, whether that is an archetypal number 9 like we've just been talking there, but the guy who is going to be our main forward through the season, and then whether there's a wide forward who can also play through the middle, or someone who plays through the middle but can equally play wide as well, which Jesus would fit the bill on that. Yeah, I would say come the first day of pre-season, 2 of, as I'd say, the 4 major signings that are needed, or major upgrades that are needed, need to be in the building. I mean, Matt Turner's a goalkeeper. It's not really, there's someone else there who's going to be there, but that's not really an essential piece of business. So for me, that needs doing. And by the start of the season, or I would say a week out from the season, all 4 key bits of business need doing, because we can't have a repeat of what happened last season. James said it there. This season is our opportunity. We have to get back in to the top 4 in Champions League football this coming season. Otherwise, we really could be staring at maybe a decade outside of it.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, James. Just before I do, though, chat box, we're going to be taking your questions in just a second. Thank you so much for the over 500 of you that are tuning in and watching. Do drop a like on the video if you are enjoying the up-to-date and daily content bringing you on the channel, and drop your questions in, because we'll be tackling them very, very soon. James, I'm interested in your thoughts briefly on, when your expectations are that you'd like to see the business done by, and also when you think it kind of crosses that line into I'm starting to get worried now, but also the opinion around Edu and how important this is for him this summer of getting it right. We remember famously that interview we did with ESPN Brazil at the end of last season, talking about how, they've had this plan, they're going to execute the plan, it's been sorted for a while, they know what they want to do. And so because you've said that and put that out there, it kind of sets that expectation of, well, if you know what you're going to do, surely you're going to get it done fairly soon.
In terms of touching your first point, the deadline, I would really like, in an ideal world, the striker and the midfield positions to be sorted by this time next month. That would be dream scenario. Realistically, I'm not sure that'll be the case. I think we say at every season for the past 10 seasons, we've always said, need to get our business done early. We never, ever, ever do. So I'm not expecting any change. We got some big signings in last summer. We signed White early. But I mean, deals like Tomiyasu rolled on for a little while. So I don't think we'll get everything done. I think particularly with the deals we're going with Jesus and Tielemans, potentially, if we're looking at those sort of players, prying them away from other Premier League clubs, negotiating, that's all going to take time. I think it could potentially get really drawn out. So I think in an ideal world, if we could get 2 of them in just before the start of the season would be great. And a dream scenario, get them bedded in throughout pre-season, and then we can relax a little bit and we can focus on, those positions that aren't necessarily a huge priority. So a wide forward, I still think that would be a great addition. Serge Gnabry, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And then potentially someone that can fill in at fullback. I mean, I'm really liking the links to Zinchenko at the minute. I think he'd be a great signing for us if we were able to get him. I think I'd even have him above someone like Aaron Hickey at the moment in terms of who I'd like to see come into the team at fullback. And in terms of Edu's reputation at Arsenal, I mean, it's been so hot and cold, hasn't it? I think he did really well last summer, and I'll be the first to praise him and say I was really happy with the business we did, because I think it was just so clear where we were going. And you had Gary Neville and co talking about the players we brought in and criticising them, and they just shows almost immediately why we've brought them in and the direction we're going in. It was clear as day where we were going, and I can definitely praise him for that. I think he lost a few brownie points for January. I think there's a lot of people that will look back at that and say, we got it wrong in the way that we did our business. But I still think, we're heading in the right direction with him. And I've got faith in him to do the business this window. Whether he does that will remain to be seen. But I was really encouraged by what I saw this time last year. if he does something similar, brings in the right names, then I don't think there's any real genuine reason to be critical of him come the end of the window. But that's a big if.
Yeah, it is a big if. We'll have to wait and see. I'm hopeful. I, like you, enjoyed what we did in the summer. I would have liked to have maybe been a bit earlier, but as you said, we've always been calling for that to happen, and it just hasn't. So maybe this is going to be the summer which is different to those. I'm confident that if this Jesus and Tielemans thing accelerates, they could both be in the club by that first pre-season game. There's a chance. Jesus said that tomorrow would be the date in which he starts to kind of assess his options on the table. So who knows what will happen? Obviously, with the situation with both players away with international duty and then having to go on their holiday, that will extend the process that it takes to get these kind of deals done. And I know that we detach ourselves from the reality of players and their personal lives, but these things like holidays do delay stuff, and you do have to be kind of accepting of that. It's not a case you just sit there and go, no, this is unacceptable, they need to be signed now. You remember the chaos of last summer when Edu had a barbecue on a boat? Like, it's just that sort of thing sends fans into meltdown. But in reality, that it does extend, it does delay transfers. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think July is a good target. I'd like to see us, have the players we want for the season by the Emirates Cup game at the latest. That's kind of what I'm looking at as that date. Let's tackle some of the questions in the last 15 minutes of the show from the chat. I don't want any kind of elaboration on this. It's just kind of a fun question for you both. Marcus says, based on realistic signings, what is our starting 11 on day one of the new Premier League season? No elaboration, just your 11. Guy, go.
Ramsdale in goal. Back four, I'm going Tomiyasu, White, Gabriel, Tierney, if he's fit.
He should be. July 6th is his return date. Yeah,
no, midfield. Partey, Ødegaard. I'll go with Xhaka. I know I've not always been his biggest fan.
No Tielemans in there.
Yeah, no, I'll go with Xhaka. And forward line, I'll go Saka, Martinelli, and at this point, I'll go Jesus. I'm not completely convinced and sold on him, but I can see that one happening. And I'd say he's the one who goes in.
So, despite all of the needs, all of the wants for Champions League football,
all of the needs,
one change,
but because I'm being realistic here, and we're probably not going to have half of the deals done. But no, I mean, to be fair, like you look at our team and how we did do the back end of the season. I actually think we performed admirably and well. We only had about 14 players. We need to make that up to at least 18, 19. And I think actually the strongest 11 as it was probably only missing a real forward presence. So, that's why I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think if Jesus was here for the last 6 months of season, fourth place probably would have been ours. James?
So I'm unfortunately going to have to be quite boring. Mine would be the exact same.
Yeah,
but
so would mine.
for the purposes of being ever so slightly different, I think we'll have signed Tielemans or someone of that ilk, but they'll be on the bench. I don't think they'll start the game. Reason being, I don't think Jack has really done anything to be dropped, to be honest with you. And that starting 11, bar obviously we had Lacazette in for a potential Jesus, was good. Like, I thought that was a good starting 11 last season. That's the 11 that played against City when we lost 2-1 and should have won that game quite comfortably. And I wouldn't really have any problems with that 11 starting the season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that Xhaka will start because he's just got that faith from Arteta right now. Tielemans will come in, and I think there'll be games where maybe if Tielemans is, of course, speaking about him as the signing, Partey will sit and it'll be Tielemans and Ødegaard in some games that play together, and that will give us kind of more expression and progressiveness in the. It's not even a word, but you know what I mean, just progressive play in the midfield. But I think that's a possibility. And if, say, we sign two forwards, it might be that Jesus is the left winger, and then the number 9 that we sign goes there, or Nketiah is there. That could be something that we see moving forward. Guy, let's go to Vishal, who says, Tom, do we need Zinchenko as well as Hickey? Are the rumours of us offering him a midfield role true? Obviously, we can't comment on whether they're true, but what do you make of the idea of having both Zinchenko and a versatile fullback like Hickey brought in?
I'm not sure I see the need. If Cedric's stopping around and we bring in Zinchenko, we've effectively got Cedric can perform the role of playing on the right and left, which Tomiyasu can do as well. We've already spoke about Saliba, who can play at right back as well. We're beginning to get a number of options there. If Rob Holding does stick around and he's the 4th, 5th choice centre-back again, I personally don't see defence needing a huge amount of work this summer, and therefore, if we can bring in Zinchenko, who effectively can cover two positions in one, and actually you sell it to him that you're going to primarily be a central midfield player, but when needed will fill in at left back. I mean, if you're building a complete squad and a squad that can challenge on multiple fronts, you do need these versatile options, which probably at the moment within the Arsenal squad, we've only a handful of them. When you think of Chelsea, you think of Liverpool, you think of Manchester City in particular, their players can play in so many different roles within the systems that they play, even if they are switching formation. And I think that's one thing we've maybe fallen away from, which we once upon a time with a player like, say, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain did have. He could play pretty much every outfield position other than centre half if desperately needed to. And I think with Zinchenko, I think he'd be a real adaptable player. And within the centre of midfield, it's where he plays for his country, and he does a great job with them. I think he'd be a strong option.
I'd love to see Zinchenko at Arsenal. I think it's a really savvy, smart move for a player that, he's underrated. You know, as a midfielder, I think he can offer a lot more than what he's been able to give to Manchester City. He was bought as an attacking midfielder, you know, when he was at Shakhtar Donetsk. He was highly rated. Arsene Wenger was a big fan of him. So it would be intriguing if he was to, say, play there, but then he would come into, in my view, direct competition with someone like Tielemans. So seeing how that dynamic works. That said, Tielemans hasn't played the most of the season on the right. So you could argue that Tielemans comes in a bit of a competitor as well for Martin Ødegaard, who has had his injury issues in the past, so would provide cover perhaps there. King says, Tom, will you be getting a black shirt with Saliba on the back? I know it's a running joke that all I wear is black, and I know I'm not going or doing anything today to disprove that theory. But that black away shirt is one of the most exciting kits I've seen for us. I love it. I don't know if either of you two disagree on this, but I love that black shirt. I think it's class, absolutely class.
I like it, but
come off it!
No. Just because I'm a bit of a kit numbers and kit. No. Just a bit of a kit numbers and kind of kit colours, kind of, I don't know, nerd, traditionalist, whatever. Arsenal playing in black are just not something. I know we had the black and pink one the other season. It's just something I'm not too used to.
We've had that one with the white, gold, and turquoise diagonal stripe.
Yeah,
that was horrible.
That was a horrible. Didn't that have like a curse with it? I thought it was like cursed to that kit.
Yeah, it was dreadful. But I remember one of our best away performances in Europe, away to Olympiacos, when we were on the verge of going out at the group stage. I think we beat them 3-0 in that kit. Unreal game.
And there was the other one, which was like the black with the like fluorescent yellow trim. I think we had on one kit, and we had a fluorescent pink trim one as well.
What was
the Ludogorets Ozil?
I was going to say was that black or was that like a real dark green? I wasn't sure.
I don't know. I
think it was a really dark blue.
Or dark blue.
It was really dark navy, wasn't it? Verging on black. But
no,
I love
the kit is nice. I do think the imagery on it, I do think is brilliant. I'm a sucker for a yellow and blue away kit. That's all.
No,
but it is a nice kit. But for me, the home kit, I'm absolutely besotted.
I will be ordering that immediately. Not Saliba. A kit of that class has to have a certain Martin Ødegaard on the back of it, I'm afraid. So that will be who goes on there. Let's tackle some more questions. I'm going to assume this is Haj. Says, would you, James, take Tammy Abraham? Jose could leave to PSG, and Tammy might then want to leave Roma.
Yeah, I would take Tammy Abraham. I'm not sure if he'd be my first option. I think you're probably telling from this podcast that mine's Jesus, but I certainly wouldn't turn my nose up at him. I think the only stumbling block would be the price, because he's not going to be cheap. He's only been there a year. I think we'd probably be looking at 70 odd million, something ludicrous like that. So I don't think out of the two options, if we're weighing it up, you know, he's a really good player. I really do like him, but I think the more sensible one would be Jesus, and I think he's more realistic too.
I agree. Matt Thornton says, do you see, Guy, any under-23s going on loan to Crawley now Kevin Betsy has taken over? I think this is a huge loss, by the way, for the club. Betsy did a great job with the under-23s last season, but do you see that maybe being an avenue for some of the real young ones going into the lower leagues?
Potentially, but I think I'm right in saying Crawley are League Two these days, aren't they? Which I don't know always how much players will get out of going down to a basement battle in League Two. I mean, you look at
I love that basement battle. I'm nicking that.
Like a player like Dan Ballard, for example, who's gone to Millwall, who's had a brilliant season in the Championship. I know he's probably a bit older.
And we'll now sell him.
Maybe, but maybe the players you're talking about would kind of fit into sending to Crawley. He's not going to have a future at Arsenal, and yet he's gone to the Championship and performed really well. And maybe if it's that kind of profile of player who within the academy that Per Mertesacker is maybe scanning, looking and thinking, this player is not going to have a career at Arsenal, but can have a solid professional career. First steps, right? We'll see how they faring Crawley. I mean, if he gets them into League One and he gets them going, like, I mean, they were in League One a decade or so ago when they first came into the Football League. They flew up and then sort of dropped back down.
That investment, didn't they? And it just didn't go anywhere.
But I'm with you. I think it's from the Arsenal perspective, really. Here, I think that the angle is the loss that Kevin Betsy is to the academy, and I think it's a huge. I mean, you were speaking before about Edu and what he's done as technical director, but Per Mertesacker as academy director this summer is a big thing for him now of working out actually how he rejigs that, because the under-23s on the quiet has been a real success for us in recent times, and being in the Europa League, and if maybe that's a competition we are staying in for longer than we all care to admit, then we need academy players coming through.
For those that didn't really tune into much of the under-23s, they want kind of an insight in how good Kevin Betsy is. In short, the season before, the one we've just had, Arsenal win a relegation scrap. You know, Steve Bob was the coach back then. It wasn't going all that well. We still had some really good talents like Aziz, etc. Balogun, of course, playing in the under-23s, but it just wasn't happening. Betsy came in this season and Arsenal were, up until, mid-season, still in a title race, and alongside, ahead of academies like Chelsea, West Ham, who have some really good young players, and Manchester City competing with them, who have arguably the best academy right now in that division. They were really up there. And when they lost Balogun, of course, as you would expect, on loan to a Championship side, that's when the goals started to drop a little. Mika Bireth was able to put in some goals, but what Betsy did with that team was brilliant. So Per Mertesacker, as you say there, guys, got a huge job to try and arrest a potential slide if they get the wrong coach in next year. The Harry Thomas, I love people who put the at the start of their names, says the James. Hi guys, do you reckon Hutchinson and Patino will get enough game time next year? Do they maybe need a loan from January?
I think Patino will stay in the squad, and I think he could potentially see quite a lot of minutes in the Carabao Cup and the Europa League. I hope he does, because he looked really good every time he played last season, obviously, apart from that game away from Forest where everyone was awful. I think Hutchinson, we've not really seen any of him in the first team yet, so I think a loan would probably be the best move for him. I've not got much more else to add on that. I think there's a lot of exciting young players coming through at Arsenal. You mentioned Aziz there. You've got Balogun coming back from his loan. It's going to be exciting. Even with players like Danny Ballard coming back, I know we'll probably sell him, but the academy is working quite well for us at the minute. The turnover is pretty good. So, I think a loan at this point for Hutchinson would be really good, because, what we've not done in the past is loan these players out when we really should, because if they're not going to work out Arsenal, at least we're getting them in the shop window. We're adding value to them. So there's no use him playing in the under-23s at this point. He's obviously gone beyond that level, but equally, there's no point in him sitting around the Arsenal first team doing nothing. So, get him a loan to maybe a Championship side and, see how it goes.
I believe I'm right in saying that he also played for the senior Jamaican side recently and had a non-competitive debut there. So again, we've got a few kids that have got international experience. Carl Hein for Estonia, Omar Rekic for Tunisia. There's some exciting talent coming through. Yeah, of course. Flores for Mexico. How can I forget? Yeah, really, really solid talent that we've got in that team, and exciting. Ballard, of course, Northern Ireland, played there for a number of years already. So really strong. Last question before we wrap up, and a quick one to finish. Any guess on a shock exit for anyone? May not be the year for it, as we need more bodies, but there's always sometimes a surprise. So just a quick answer on this. Guy, who's your shock exit we might see this summer?
Probably not shock. Granit Xhaka, if I had to pick one. Just off the top of my head,
I don't think
if anyone's to go. No, I don't think he is. But yeah, and actually, I think it speaks to how well he's done last season, maybe epitomising how Arsenal have improved. If he is to leave, I think 12 months ago, a lot of people would have said, "All right, fair enough." I think this time round, if he goes, a lot of people actually would be quite disappointed.
James.
I don't think this will happen either, but I think potentially Rob Holding, if a decent enough bid comes in for him, maybe around the £5 to £10 million mark, I think he could slot into any bottom 10 Premier League club and play week in, week out. So if that offer did come in from a side, maybe potentially one of the newly promoted ones, I could see his head being turned, and I could see the club being interested in that as well.
I'm going to go with, and it would be a big shock, but following Balogun, after seeing Nketiah sign his new contract, if indeed he does, which we're led to believe he will, I would be pretty miffed if I was him after signing that new deal. So if Arsenal did say receive an offer, and I think it would be a little bit opportunistic of other clubs to see through that situation and perhaps try and tempt Arsenal into a sale, maybe he would be a bit of a shock exit. I think he should go on loan to a Premier League side, Nottingham Forest, maybe next season. But yeah, that's probably the next step for him. There's some shouts. I don't think people know what shock means. I think Pepe is not a shock. Leno certainly wouldn't be a shock either. But it shows you how difficult it would be. Tierney was the other one I was thinking of, maybe, you know, 50 odd million quid linked to Real Madrid. Saliba, you could say now, would be a bit of a shock after what he said. There was reports I've just read about Napoli supposedly inquiring. They're always going after defenders either we've got or that we want. So maybe Saliba should go on that list. I'd like to thank my guests who have been absolutely fantastic. Chat box, if we could show them some love, that would be great. Guy, thank you so much for making your debut on the channel. Fantastic one at that. And lovely to speak to you again, of course.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for filling me with my opportunity for an Arsenal fix.
Absolutely. Tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, I am on socials, as you can see there, at Guy Clark05. As Tom said at the top, working primarily on Liverpool content these days. So, yeah, it is what it is. But hopefully when I get the chance, I'm at the Arsenal way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, indeed. Guys are he's our Mohamed El Neni at times. He jumps in when Thomas Partey is not available, which is great. But no, he does.
Just don't have the hair.
Yeah, of course. That'd be great. Why don't we get an El Neni wig? That's what we should do. Lovely stuff. James, thank you so much as well. Great to speak to you again. I'm sure it won't be long until you're back on again soon. Tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. It's been a pleasure chatting with you both about the Arsenal. You can find me on Twitter at JECook96 for all things terribly opinionated about Arsenal.
There you go. Lovely stuff. You can find ourselves at the Gooner Talk TV, myself at Tom Canton Media. And of course, you can check out my stuff with Guy and the team over on the Arsenal Way. There's a fantastic show on Scamacca with an Italian football expert coming out this evening, courtesy of Umar. Thank you so much, Umar, for sorting that out. It was a really insightful show. So make sure you are subscribed. Link in the link tree in the description. So make sure you go and check that one out. I'll be back as usual, bright and early, 8 a.m., bringing you all the latest Arsenal news and transfer content. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.